First of all, it is a sham that we sit here and y'all pretend as if you care about what the people have to say, but we are going to make y'all listen as long as you will. This map does nothing but divide, distract, and depress. There is this idea that was put out there during his opening remarks that this does so much for Black folk. Well, let me tell you, as a Black person, it does not. Let me tell you that in this map, to be clear, y'all added two additional Anglo-majority seats. Now, when we went through the 21 maps, you added 2 Anglo-majority seats, and now you're adding 2 more Anglo-majority seats, and then you've decided that you are going to pack and crack, and that is the language that I am going to use, because that is the legal language. And I also just want to remind y'all really quickly that it does not look good when you take every economic engine out of my district and then tell me that I am supposed to sit here and be so happy because you added Black folk from a whole other community. When you want to talk about monoliths and whether or not they exist, this idea that you just take people and move them around. I have 200,000 people who were never in my district, and my district is 766,000. Playing move minorities around so that you can somehow claim that this is nothing but partisanship. The only way that you get here is by making sure that you trample upon the rights and the liberties and the voices of minorities. So let me give you a few facts about the state of Texas. The state of Texas only has 39% Anglos, yet somehow under this map, we are going to have somewhere near 60-something, almost 70% of these seats are going to be chosen by Anglos. If we were looking for fairness and to follow the Voting Rights Act, you'd have 15 Latino opportunity seats, 15 Anglo seats. You then have 4 African-American opportunity seats. Then you'd have 2 Asian opportunity seats, and the other 2 seats would belong to coalitions, because we are a majority-minority state where over 60% of this population is people of color. So if you want to do what's fair and right under the Voting Rights Act, as well as if you say that this Fifth Circuit Court case matters and somehow changes everything, my question to you is, when are y'all gonna do y'all's maps? Because you did your maps in 2021, and then the case came out, and I haven't seen y'all talk about the fact that you're gonna redistrict the House and the Senate.
Thank you for testimony. And you have questions? You okay? Representative Turner, recognize the question of the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions for Congresswoman Crockett.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. You mentioned in your testimony that this proposal, House Bill 4, removes economic engines from Congressional District 30.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. So Dallas Love Airport has historically been in District 30 maybe since it was created, which was also in 1990. It is gone now. All of downtown Dallas, which has AT&T headquarters, Goldman Sachs is there, and a number of others, entirety of downtown has been removed as well. As well as right there, this isn't necessarily one of the economic engines, but right there at the airport is a historic Freedmen's Town. And so I do have a number of Freedmen's Towns in general that are in my district. They removed that one that is right there by the airport, and they also removed, no, that's the only one that they removed. From what I can tell, I've not had a great opportunity to review these maps. It's been slow. And then they also removed the medical center. And what is so heartbreaking specifically about them removing the medical center from this district is that one of the 3 ARPA-H facilities that was authorized under the previous administration, the state of Texas is the only Republican state to get one, and I got it to come to my district. We're talking about tons of jobs. We're talking about a lot of money overall for medical research, and they removed that as well. As of now, I am unclear as to what economic engines really do still exist within the current iteration of my district.
And you're right. I know that Love Field, downtown, those have historically been parts of Congressional District 30, dating back to Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson's early years in Congress. Yes. So it is shocking to see them removed. You mentioned how the map brings you further into Tarrant County.
Yes.
And so you would represent a big chunk of Arlington under this proposal. But I noted in looking at the boundaries of the map in Arlington, It takes Congressional District 30 right up to the edge of UT Arlington,
Right.
but doesn't include UT Arlington.
Correct.
And it takes you right up to the edge of the General Motors plant, but does not include the General Motors plant.
Right.
So those are, and it certainly doesn't include the entertainment district.
No.
And so those are three economic engines in Arlington, which you would represent a much larger portion of, but they would not be in your district either.
That is absolutely right. And it's interesting that you bring up the Tarrant County aspect. I do want to be clear, because we are talking about the Voting Rights Act. When we're talking about the Voting Rights Act, we're talking specifically about Section 2. Section 2 is about race. So we will continue to mention race because that is the law. Section 2 and the Voting Rights Act overall was codified to basically further explain the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, which again was about race. So that's why we're talking about it. So when you look at Dallas County and the way that they have sliced it up, Dallas County is one of the most diverse counties in the entire state of Texas. But unfortunately, what they've done is they've taken those minority communities and they've separated them out. They've either divided them into random districts that have nothing to do with the things that they need. They're not communities of common interest, or they've packed them into districts. And now they're claiming, oh, we created a new something for you, so be happy. And it's not true. So when it comes to Tarrant County, unfortunately, Congressional District 33 was pretty much anchored in Tarrant County. All of those historic Black areas, Stop 6 and others, they now are supposedly going to be represented by somebody who's probably never, ever going to walk those streets. I just want to be honest about that. And so the Tarrant County portion, in my opinion, it is being failed right now because what it should be is it should be either majority in Tarrant County or linked with other people in Tarrant County that are more communities of interest, or there should just be a wholly contained Tarrant County district, and they could absolutely do that, and they're choosing not to.
Absolutely. And in my view of the Tarrant County portion of the map is that, tell me if you agree with this, the minority voting strength in Tarrant County is greatly diminished through classic cracking in the case of CD 33 and packing in the case of CD 30.
Absolutely.
That fair to say?
That's absolutely. They used CD 30 to pack it up with minorities that they felt like maybe wouldn't go along with a white supremacist agenda, but yes.
And the previous comment, I think, from the bill author, maybe in response.
Been a question. I mean that's not even been the position of the state. I am engaged in litigation from the 2021 maps where they used CD30 in a similar way. And actually at the time that the 2021 maps, well, as we were working on the maps and the numbers came out, CD30 had a naturally occurring population of 52% citizen voting age population being African American. This legislature in 21 decided to pull it down from being over 50%. And they were allowed to do so because federal law says that it's more so about, will this still perform as an African-American opportunity seat? So they did not do me a favor and somehow create an African-American opportunity seat. And their position in this current litigation that has not been resolved has been that CD30 is protected under the Voting Rights Act as an African-American opportunity seat.
Absolutely. And back to the last question, back to economic engines briefly. Federal courts have historically looked at redistricting plans, and when legislatures have removed key economic engines from majority minority districts and districts represented by minority members of Congress or minority legislators, they have, is it fair to say they have taken a dim view of legislatures doing that?
They have absolutely taken a dim view, which is one of the reasons that I brought that up. In addition to the fact that I know that this legislature did ask us as members of Congress to confirm our addresses. I don't know how many of us actually still reside in the districts that we represent. I do not currently reside in my district based upon the plan that has been drawn, which is another red flag, in addition to courts consistently looking at how many people have been moved. And when we do the math, our districts are approximately 766,000 people, all of a sudden randomly moving approximately 200,000 people out and another 200,000 people in, because Tarrant County, I only had about 50,000 people in the current iteration. Now I'm going to have 250,000 people from Tarrant County.
Right. That's information I didn't know. So the legislature, as Texas Legislative Council, asked you recently for your home address? Prior
to the testimony actually beginning, the public testimony that took place, they asked us to certify that our addresses were still correct, as well as the census tract. And we confirmed that, and we emailed back, and I got confirmation that they received it. Yet I know I was removed from my district. I know Mark Vesey was removed from his district. I know Julie Johnson's not in her district, and I can't. Joaquin is not in his. So listen, they took all of us out. They basically left the numbers somewhere else and removed us, is all I know, which is yet another thing that the courts will look at. I will be clear that I have every intention of going to court as soon as possible to get an emergency action done, because I do feel as if there is a violation right now, if this map passes, of the Voting Rights Act for so many reasons.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Mr. Chairman, can I ask the chairman and the bill author if the committee or legislative council requested to verify home address information for members of Congress, and that information was received, why was that information disregarded, and members of Congress, particularly minority members of Congress representing majority minority districts, were seemingly intentionally drawn out of their districts?
Chair's not advised or aware of that, so we'll understood, and we'll look into it.
Would the bill author be able to address that?
Bill author's not currently at this. I mean, you can ask him at close. Yeah, but I don't know.
I'd be curious
because it's legislative council. I don't know what legislative council receives or not.
I'd be curious to know if the law firm Butler Snow that ostensibly drew the map had that information, and did they just choose to disregard it?
Understood. Let's see. Going back, Mr. Stogler, real quick before we go to our next question. Whenever we change you to register on behalf of yourself as well, we need to list your occupation. Would you mind telling me your occupation that we could list on your registration?
I'm retired.
Retired, okay.
Yes.
And we have your permission to put that on your registration?
Yes.
All right, we've done so. Thank you very much. Next questioner, we had Representative Spiller. Let's recognize the question panel.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few questions for Congresswoman Crockett, if you don't mind. Thank you for being here today. You referenced in your testimony a few things about the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 in particular. You talked about the Petaway case, talked about coalition districts, the subject of the Petaway case, and you sound like you're pretty involved in litigation relating to redistricting. Have you, you're an attorney, have you read the Petaway case?
I have not read the Petaway case, but I am familiar-ish with it.
Okay. You understand that, I mean, you don't dispute that it's the law currently in the state of Texas?
I won't dispute that the Fifth Circuit has entered the decision. I will dispute that the Supreme Court has affirmed that decision. And I also want to say that I was present while the bill author talked about his interpretation of Petaway, and I disagree with his interpretation. In fact, he basically said this means that we can tear apart coalition districts, and that's not what it said. The Petaway decision stands for the position that you don't necessarily have to create new districts that are coalition districts, but not that the current coalition districts should not enjoy the protections under the Voting Rights Act. And what we're seeing here is that you are intentionally destroying coalition districts because of a misinterpretation of a Fifth Circuit court opinion that, in my opinion, is also going to lead, because of the amount of minorities that we've talked about that have been moved around, because the Voting Rights Act itself stands for minorities having a voice, and we are in a majority minority state. I think that just like every single time Texas has gone to court, they have lost for being intentionally racially discriminatory. I believe that there will be no difference this time. You will be found to be intentionally racially discriminatory. I will tell you that this administration could care less. This administration just doesn't want to check, especially if it means people that are loud and proud like me have the ability to do a check on this administration for their last 2 years.
And that's your analysis of the opinion that you've not yet read.
Correct. I've not read the opinion,
All
but
right.
I've
Well, if
definitely
you'll-
read summaries of it.
When you do read the opinion, which I would encourage you to do, if you'll look to page 17, it talks about one of the reasons that the court ruled the way that it did had to do with statutory construction. And it strictly construed Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and referenced the fact that Congress has been silent. Congress has not amended that or addressed that and addressed coalition districts under the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So my question to you as a member of Congress, since the ruling in Petaway a year ago, have you filed any amendment to the Voting Rights Act that would allow you and allow the Voting Rights Act to be amended to provide for coalition districts?
Well, let me tell you something. As it relates to the Voting Rights Act, I have always signed on to and believe that we should pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would replace the entirety of the Voting Rights Act, as well as the Freedom to Vote Act, which would actually make sure that we could get some of this money out that allowed a presidency to be bought. So to be clear, when we left the last time when I was serving in the State House, we left because we wanted Congress to pass those two bills then. And since I've been a member of Congress, I have signed on. So do I have a fix? Absolutely. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, Advancement Act. And you know who doesn't want to sign on?
And
people from your party.
Right.
So, I mean, I can't do nothing in the minority, but if I could wave a magic wand, or if you'd like to call some of my Republican colleagues on the federal level and tell them that they should do right like historically Republicans have, because it has always been bipartisan to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act. And we know that a Republican governor from the state of Texas, it was a Bush that reauthorized it last time. And when I say bipartisan, I'm not talking about one or two. I'm talking about passing with like 99 people. So listen, we are ready. We just need people that believe in fairness and freedom in this country to sign up and agree with us, and we will get this done. We will fix all the problems.
And I think my question is after the Petaway ruling a year ago, have you, since that time, filed any legislation to amend Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act to address the coalition district concerns that you raise? And I think that your answer is no.
The answer is that I have signed on to the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would resolve all of these issues.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Barbara Gordon Hawkins to question the panel. Is that right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congresswoman Crockett, you know, you've been in these chairs, and now you're on the other side. In speaking to our colleagues and trying to solicit their support to do the right thing, what would you recommend to our colleagues?
Listen, it is so frustrating to be here, and regardless of differences, you know, in fact, going to DC was such an adjustment for me, because when we do everything in DC, it's left or right. That's how we enter rooms. That's how we sit. Everything is left or right. Even when we're on the floor, that's how we vote. But in the Texas House, your desk mate may be a Republican. In the Texas House, regardless of our differences, guess what? So long as your key was in your desk, one of your Republican colleagues may vote your desk and will vote it the right way. They know you were going to be the opposite of them, and they would vote it the right way. So it was weird for everything to be so separated, because even though we obviously were not in the majority when I was here, there still was this kind of Texas pride that we always walked with. And it was always that, listen, we are Texas, we are not DC. And right now, y'all are being DC'd. And that is wild to me, because we always talked about how we were Texas and that we didn't do the DC stuff. And so now to get caught up in this and do harm to the constituents that trust us, you talk about the hearings that took place. There were Republicans that said at the end of the day, I may not agree with the Democrats, but I agree with fairness. So I am here to testify against this process because it's not fair. I'm just asking for the Texas legislature to do what the Texas legislature has always done, which is to be Texas and not be DC.
Thank you.
Representative Pearson, you recognize the question of the panel.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for Congresswoman Crockett. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts on the map. I hear you, I understand. But you did mention something in your testimony that I think is worth drawing out a little bit on. You mentioned previously the 2 Anglo seats from before.
Yes.
Who are currently in those seats?
One of them is Lloyd Doggett and the other one is Wesley Hunt.
And does that mean one is a Democrat seat and one is a Republican seat?
Correct.
Okay. So the Democrat seat elected a white man.
Yes.
And the Republican seat elected a black man.
Yes.
Okay. And then so today you're concerned about the new Anglo seats, and the assumption that you're making is that it's going to lead to more Anglo representation.
It is.
Okay.
Because so to be clear, because I may have not been clear, these seats are not about who gets elected. They're about who gets to choose who is elected. And so, my district, while it is an African American opportunity seat, it is an opportunity for African Americans to choose their representation. But they don't have to elect a black person. We have a similar seat in Memphis, Tennessee, that historically was always represented by the Ford family. Harold Ford Sr. and Harold Ford Jr. had it, but now it is a white man that is representing that black seat. So it's not about the faces of the seats. It's about who gets to choose who's in the seat. And that doesn't mean that they're going to choose their own race. As you see, 2 Anglo-majority seats, one went for a white candidate, one went for a black candidate. It's not about us as candidates. It's about the people that get to do the choosing.
Well, I would argue that based on the testimony that we've heard over the last week or so, it's both. We're hearing racism all over the place. We're hearing, people want to choose people who look like them, which apparently has been happening. And I just wanted to make it clear that, something that has not been said yet is that there are minority Republicans. I mean, there is a black and Hispanic Republican on the dais. And so I just don't think it's fair to just assume that the Anglo districts are going to lead to more Anglo representation.
Again,
but those were your words, so I'm just
I apologize if that is how it was interpreted, but my clarification is that when we're talking about the law and the Voting Rights Act, it's never been based upon who it is that gets elected. It's based upon who it is that gets to choose who is elected. And unfortunately, adding 2 more Anglo seats in a state that added, if we're going on the census that came out in 2021, there were only 180,000 new Anglos to this state. So the idea that we would take the bodies of Black, Brown, and Asian, 95% of what allowed this state to garner 2 new seats, and basically use their bodies for the benefit of making sure that a shrinking majority continue to hold on to power is wild. Because when we look at the numbers, this is just to clarify. In the last 3 censuses, in 2000, Anglos were 52.43% of the state of Texas. In 2010, Anglos were 45.33% of the state of Texas. In 2020, Anglos ended up being found to be 39.75%. At the same time that Anglo percentages were going down, somehow their seats and their ability to elect more representation to DC goes up at the same time that Latinos back in 2000, 31.99% of the state. Then it went to 37.62 in 2010, and then it went to 39.26 in 2020. Yet somehow they still don't have the ability to elect representatives of their choice, whoever they elect. It may be, you know what, we can talk about Lloyd Doggett. Lloyd Doggett, for the longest, was representing a seat that was a Latino opportunity seat. They chose Lloyd Doggett. That's fine. We just want people of color to be able to choose their representation so that we can comply with the Voting Rights Act as well as the 15th Amendment of the Constitution. That is it. And who they decide to elect is who they decide to elect. And in addition to this state being in trouble in previous court litigation, they have found that when this state legislature has said, oh, well, we'll add these minorities over here. Well, again, when you start shifting people around, they found historically, I want to say it was around the 2010 redistricting, that what Texas did is they decided to add basically low propensity Latinos in one of the districts. So that again, that district would not be Latinos being able to elect their representation because they took people that they knew had a low propensity to show up.
And so on that note, with these new lines, political performance was taken in consideration.
That is what we've heard from the bill author, yes.
And in previous hearings, I mentioned specifically that in the state of Texas, President Trump did win a majority of the Hispanic voters in the state. And just to broaden that even further, I mean, those are the numbers. President Trump did win the majority of the Hispanic votes in the state. In fact, he flipped, I believe it was 10 counties in the state. So don't you think that is reflective of this map, this proposed map, that the minorities who are here with the new minority districts that have been created, it is reflective?
No, Representative, I don't. Again,
Okay.
It's just based upon, I mean, this is just pure math. Like, I'm not trying to pick who is going to vote for who, because as it was stated earlier, the idea that anybody is a monolith is wild anyway, right? Because first of all, Latinos down at the border, they are not the same as Latinos, say, in the DFW or in Harris County. Like, so I don't want to pretend as if any minority group is a monolith, which is one of the reasons that we talk about communities of common interest, because we work together and we function together and we do things a little differently. I mean, I'm sure there are even black folk in Houston that will argue that they're not the same as Dallas black people, right? So it's an ongoing thing. But nevertheless, what I will say is that is why you shouldn't just be grabbing up people from wherever and saying, oh, well, they all the same race. It is bigger than that. It is trying to make sure, and you brought up compactness earlier. And so compactness is one of those things that you consider as well, because again, it is different. When you look at a state the size of Texas, you know how many states you can fit in our state, right? So thinking about it in that way, a reflective map would look like the fact that only 39% of this state is Anglo. So how in the heck do we have 60% of the seats that go to DC are going to be decided by Anglos? That's the math that doesn't work. We need to flip the numbers so that people of color, no matter who they vote for, if they decide they're voting for Trump, and you're right, because of the 13 democratically elected seats in the state of Texas, one of those seats was a majority white seat. That's it. Everybody else, it was people of color that sent us to DC. But when we look at the Republicans, of the 25 seats, 23 of those seats are Anglo-majority seats. 2 of those seats, Latinos are the ones that chose. And I don't have a beef with that. Like, that's who they elected, and that is perfectly fine. So they have 2 Anglo seats that are Republican. 2 Latino opportunity seats that elected Republicans. That is perfectly fine. People vote for who they vote for, but don't divide our communities and dilute our voices. And that's why we're here, because we feel like we're being diluted because we're packing black folk, or the bill author mentioned that there's some district that went up to over 70-something% Latino. That is packing. You don't need almost 80% Latinos for that district to perform as a Latino opportunity seat.
And so you don't agree with the new minority Hispanic seats? Because
I don't agree with this map.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.